What's up, disciples? It is the final episode of Season 7, Episode 87, with Allison Zehnder coming onto the podcast. Can't wait to have her on. Hey, the mission of this podcast is we want to challenge you to be the greatest disciple of Jesus that you can possibly be. Today's episode, Chris Johnson's going to host, and Allison and I are going to be the interviewees. And so I can't wait to share more about our newest product, our newest project, which is Red Letter Advent, a 25-day devotional to unbox the gifts, 4 gifts of hope, peace, joy, and love. Allison and I, we really did co-write this one. My name's on a lot of the kids' books, but really it's Allison taking the lead on all these. Red Letter Advent was a joint project together that we got to work on. So we're going to talk about not only the project and how we got to come up with an Advent book, but we're going to talk about a lot of husbands and wives work together. Allison and I do. And so you're going to hear from her and from myself about what it's like to work together with one another. You'll hear more about her story growing up in West Togo, Africa, on the mission field, and why she loves writing so much and why I don't necessarily. And yet still, God's brought us together to be this duo. And so I can't wait you to meet Allison on the podcast. We're closing out season with the greatest podcast guest of all time, Allison Zehnder. So, hey, thank you again to our sponsor, Red Letter Living. We thought only appropriate that we close the episode if we're talking about this newest product. That is our sponsor today, Red Letter Advent. It's a 25-day devotional that is designed for you to unbox the 4 gifts of hope, peace, joy, and love that Jesus wants you to not only receive, but to give away as well. And so if you haven't got into redletteradvent.com, you can go to redletteradvent.com and you can get this book. There is limited supply available because we did a lot of pre-sale on this and it's a seasonal product. And so there may only be a few copies left. But hey, grab one of those copies at redletteradvent.com for a powerful month of December. You can hopefully still get books to use for your church this upcoming Advent if you haven't got anything going for Advent yet. And also, if you are an individual or want to buy a few copies for your family or for some of your older kids, we would love for you to do that. redletteradvent.com. The books are hot off the press. So grab that right now and have a great Advent season with your family and hopefully with your church as well. So don't miss any of the episodes. The way you don't miss any of the future episodes, I know we're going to be taking a break. I'll tell you a little about that at the end, is subscribe or follow on your favorite platform. And while you're there, if you give us a 5-star rating or review, that'd be awesome. So let's get to today's episode with Allison Zehnder. Let's do this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special Red Letter disciple. Not only are we taking the microphone away from the typical host, Zach Zehnder, but zip it, this is my chance. This opportunity today, I got to be honest with you, she's more comfortable behind a computer than behind a camera. I don't know what kind of deal that Zach made to bring my favorite half of the Zehnder family here, Allison Zehnder. But we have her today.
In studio.
This is not your turn, okay? This is my turn, all right? Allison grew up, get this, I bet you know this, in Togo, West Africa. And not Toto, but Togo.
Yeah.
She was a missionary kid. After moving back to the United States, she graduated from where?
Concordia University, Wisconsin. Go Falcons.
Correct. That is correct. She has a degree in theology and a minor in mission and youth ministry. After moving with her husband to Mount Dora, Florida, Mount Dora.
I don't think you needed to put with her husband. Like, they know that.
After moving with this guy to Mount Dora,
you don't
Florida,
need that part.
Allison served as children director for 5 years at the wonderful The Cross in Mount Dora. She is the author of Red Letter Challenge for Kids, Serving Challenge for Kids, Forgiving Challenge for Kids, and Being Challenge for Kids. This woman is a prolific author, and again, I'm going to say it, my favorite Zehnder. Ladies and gentlemen, she lives in Elkhorn, Nebraska with Zach and their 2 sons, not stunts. Let's introduce the one, the only, Allison Zehnder.
Wow. This is monumental today. Thank you for the passion there, Chris.
First question, what did you have to do? Because, Allison, let's just be honest. You would rather, right now, be typing behind a computer than have a headset on with a camera pointed at you. Is that correct?
That is true.
Yeah. What kind of deal did Zach have to make to get you to come on? Because you are humble, unlike your husband. You are shy, unlike your husband. This is not about you. It's about me and Allison. Was there any kind of secret deal that was made behind the scenes that I'm unaware of?
I did tell him he had to take me to Hawaii.
Wow.
Yeah.
And if he did that, I would go on the podcast.
That's fine. And I heard something about sushi being mentioned as well.
Maybe
Okay.
sushi tonight. We'll see.
You know, you have a very interesting background. You grew up, and I've never been there, but you grew up as a missionary kid in Africa. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like?
So a lot of times when you ask people about growing up in Africa, they are adults who've decided, oh, that sounds so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go and have this adventure.
Yeah.
That was not me. I was taken at 1 year old. My parents wanted to go be missionaries. So they moved me in 1984, January of 1984. I was 18 months.
Wow.
And have no memories before that. So
Sure.
all of my childhood, and then I moved back to America at age of 12 on my 12th birthday.
Oh, wow.
So all I knew about childhood was living in Africa, and I didn't really know anything different. So I didn't have what I thought was weird was coming back to America and all the weird dysfunctions I saw here. I thought Africa was the normal place and America was the weird. If you've ever seen Mean Girls, I kind of had a Mean Girls Lindsay Lohan experience where I was the weird one. I didn't know Virgin Mary. I thought that was Madonna. Madonna. I didn't know, a lot of the pop culture things, but I learned quick.
You did.
Yeah.
And so talk about real briefly, like what were some of the things that you would do as a kid in Africa?
Well, my best friends were African villagers. So Dad built a playground in our front yard with a tire swing, a jungle gym, seesaw, big sand pit. And the African kids had never seen a playground. So they thought this was the coolest thing ever. And I was in charge of the whole thing because it was my house. So I got to call the shots all the time.
Down off the jungle gym. It's my turn.
Yeah.
And what you need to know, too, is Allison is the oldest of 5 kids.
Right.
And so she is like the leader, in the house for the kids and creating all these atmospheres and environments and projects. Like she's the one leading these
So
things,
you had siblings that were born, obviously, when you were in Africa as well.
Yeah. 3 out of the 4 younger were born there.
Which, I
so
mean,
they can never be president.
but you can't be president either. No, you can't. You were born in the United States.
Technically, yeah, I can. You
Are
have
you
to
running?
be born.
Yeah.
I'm considering it.
Oh, wow. See how this interview goes. Yeah.
We've learned a
public
lot.
office,
We have learned a lot so far. So your sisters, do you ever bring that up that they can never run for president?
Sometimes. That's like my trump card. Yeah. If we're in an argument, I can say, well, I can still run for president.
Pun intended, no pun intended. I don't know. Elections
Cut
in a couple
that,
weeks. I'm not sure if that's a prophecy or not, but
a lot could happen. A lot could happen. So then you talked a little bit about when you moved from, I wonder what it's like to be born in Africa too, by the way, but nevertheless, you go from Africa and you notice some different things when you went to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So talk about that real quick. Like what are you, I mean, obviously you're going from, well, first describe to me what the village was like in Togo that you grew up in and spent most of your childhood in.
So Togo is the country.
Okay, my bad.
And then this village we grew up in was Nano. Describe what it was like. Very rural. Everyone lived in mud huts but us.
What'd you live in?
Like kind of a Western house built with cement blocks. We did have running water, but we had to collect rainwater and then pump it up into a cistern, and that's how we had running water through gravity.
Just like your house now.
A little different. Yeah. I have no pity for my kids, by the way, who complain about like temperature because we had no AC in Togo. Like they get no sympathy from me.
Yeah.
I also went to the village school where the teachers use like ruler,
Oh, it's like
physical punishment
super
if you
discipline.
miss. Yeah, and it was first grade, and I was learning French because they learn French for a whole year, and then everything's taught in French because there's all these different tribal languages.
Yeah.
And tribal.
So you didn't go to a school your entire elementary that did English at all.
Well, then I was homeschooled.
Oh, I see.
But
Okay.
my mom wanted me to have an immersive experience.
Oh, so that you did.
So the teacher had called me to the blackboard, and
Uh-huh.
he wrote the letter E. Now in French, that's E and I are mixed.
Okay.
And so I said the wrong thing, and he made me put out my hand, and I got a slap with the ruler.
Yeah.
Now some kids got like whipped really hard, and that was, but
So was that an effective way for you?
actually I never forgot E and I in French. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I heard. Zach does that in Bible study sometimes. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
you know.
So you come back. Can you still speak French at all?
Je peux parler un peu.
Oh,
wow.
All right. Okay. So then you see some discrepancies when you come back to Wisconsin. Life is different. Talk about that briefly. What are the differences?
One is we didn't have to filter our water ever.
Mm-hmm.
So that was weird. Like you could just
Take
turn
it from
on
the tap.
sink. Yeah. And nobody like shook out their shoes because we had to do that every morning because scorpions and bugs crawled into your shoes.
Right.
I thought that was wild.
Yeah.
That no one had to do that. I still sometimes do that to this day.
Yeah.
Like shake out my shoes.
Right.
Even though I've yet to see a scorpion inside our house.
In Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. So were you sad when they told you, hey, we're going to the United States?
I thought it was a big fun adventure. I
Okay.
definitely got homesick once I moved after a while. Missed some of my friends, and there's no way to even communicate with
Right.
them.
Yeah. Back then, it's not like you can get on Skype or
There's
something.
no, like, they don't even have addresses. So I couldn't even write them a letter if I wanted to. Although all those kids are now on Facebook.
Are they
and
really?
friending me
That's
on Facebook.
incredible.
And telling me, do you remember when?
Oh
And
my
I'm in a
gosh.
Facebook group called The Children from Nano.
Oh.
Les Enfants de Nano. And I see all these updates from
That's
all
really
these kids.
cool.
I know. And they included me. I'm the only white girl, only white person in this whole village.
Wow. And so have you ever gone back?
I have gone back to Uganda,
Mm-hmm.
to Africa, but not to Togo. There's just a lot of logistics that are challenging. There's no, where would I stay and how would I get there? It's hard. Yeah.
Okay.
But maybe someday.
That's really cool. Did you go to Africa with her?
We went to Uganda together with Hope Chest.
Okay.
We did that vision trip, and we took our two boys that were at that time 8 and 12, I think. And so it was
very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was neat, kind of watching it in her eyes, even though it wasn't the same. It was similar. To be in that environment was pretty awesome.
Yeah. I can't imagine going from a rural place surrounded by mud huts, and then the next day you wake up and you're like in modern America, like that.
Yeah.
Well, Grandma would record Full House and send us cassette tapes of the old VHS of Full House, and that was a great education for me on what was cool and not cool and how Americans acted. So I literally learned how to be American from
Watching
Mary
Full
Kate
House.
and Ashley Olsen.
Wow, there you go.
Man, that is something.
Like the rest of
John
us,
Stamos
right?
and Bob Saget.
Yeah.
Was it tough to
Rebecca Romaine.
Were you homeschooled when you went to Wisconsin, or did you go to?
No, then I went to private school.
Was that a tough transition?
Yes.
Yeah. In what sense?
Well, I would daydream a lot, and so I got the nickname Dreamer because I would just kind of zone out. It was long. It was a long day.
It was a longer day than you had in the regular school.
And cold.
Yeah.
And boring.
Yeah.
But I adjusted pretty quick.
That is the correct answer. School was boring. Yes. Okay. You and Zach have this kind of, not only are you married, but, and my wife, Jen, and I have talked about this, that, we planted a church together, and this is the first time we've worked together. And there are some challenges with that for sure. It's hard to kind of switch out of the vocation role and then back to the husband and wife role. But you guys are even more intimate in the fact that you've written books together, and your entire marriage, you've literally worked together. So with that being said, what have you both learned about working with one another? And because I'm sure that a lot of pastors that are listening to this right now, they work with their spouse, right? And you better like it. It's going to be tough. And so with that, what can you tell maybe a younger couple that what to do or what not to do that can help couples actually achieve work together?
Yeah. You want me to take it first? Okay. Yeah, I think if I were telling a younger couple, we've had 20 plus years of working together. So even before, we did the Cross Family Church in Mount Dora, I was selling online some golf equipment, and she would help me with that. And then we, of course, had kids, and obviously that's working together, whether it's the pay's not great, but kids are work for sure.
Right.
But then we work together at the church, and then after the church, now we work together at Red Letter Living. And I think it's just, if I had to counsel my younger self, it would be, I used to make fun of like a lot of the personality-driven tests and assessments and things like that. And I don't know why I did. I think the more I understand her personality, and even we talked earlier this year about the working genius, also what gives her joy and fulfillment, I think I understand her more now and realize she's different than I am. And knowing those differences, I think, does help us work better.
Yeah, so to talk about that a little bit. We had an episode before with the working genius, and your letters were what?
So I'm like a invention, and I want to invent new things, and I want to rally people around it, and let's go.
And then what was yours?
Discernment.
Okay.
And
enablement.
So
she's going to say no to all my ideas.
Right. Well, I mean,
but then she'll help once we figure out what to do.
But that was the biggest tension with Jen and I, because we're the exact same. I'm I and G, and she's discernment. And so every time I would come up with an idea, I felt like she was punching back, and like maybe the pride in me was like, oh, she hates this idea, as soon as she was questioning how we were going to do it.
Yeah.
And it got to the point, and this is no baloney, it got to the point where she's like, just stop giving me your ideas if you don't want to hear. And I was like, oh my gosh, for a few months.
I got so many good ones.
I know. Well, because an IG never has a bad idea, right? Which is a lie. But then the thing that helped me in the other podcast was like, no, wait a second. The person who's discerning actually wants you to win. They just want to help you. And that's the way that they know. And
a discerner will assume you've already, when we bring an idea to the table, we've discerned it.
Yeah.
You have not discerned it.
100%.
So that is a shift, because we assume you've already thought through all the possibilities and still think, despite all this, I'm going to go forward with it.
Right.
So I didn't realize I could still discern. I thought, now he's thought through it, and we need to go make this happen.
Yeah.
But once I learned,
now he's in his galvanizing rally.
Yeah, I realized once I don't have to do all these things, it makes it easier to listen.
Right. And so like an IG guy like Zach will say, let's drop a bunch of eggs, on people at the Easter egg.
Well, we did that.
That was not what it was intended.
Well, he likes, like, for example, he did the longest speech. So he likes to, like, talk about doing that again. Yeah. And so
we have an idea.
Rather than, I'm sure you do, rather than me immediately saying, what about this, what about this, what about this, I just go, oh, yeah, okay.
Well, and I think...
And hope he never actually...
And I think, like, that's kind of become my wife, too. Like, she has been, like, she realizes that I have 1,000 ideas, and she doesn't have to discern every one. And that maybe 2% of my ideas might come to fruition, right? And so that's been helpful too. Like, oh, that's a good idea, sweetheart. Go for it. And then I forget about it.
Yeah, the other thing with working together that I think we constantly work on, and I'm constantly working on, is just the need for communication. More is always better. And that's continually been a weakness of mine, is to communicate effectively, quantity and quality of communication.
Which is interesting, because you literally get paid to communicate.
Yeah, but yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of like somebody said that there's, if you're an electrician, like your house is going to be have the worst electrical work because you do the electrician work outside and then you come back and you never want to do it there.
Right.
I mean, that can be some.
I think so. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Ministry, like sometimes you're, even in these long podcast recording days, which are a ton of fun. Right. It's a lot of active listening,
right?
And there's not a lot of pity from people that think, oh, a camera Like you're just having fun.
Right.
And I can go home after these days and just be exhausted.
He literally last night we got done doing 4 podcasts, and I'm playing golf on the video game thing with his son. I look over at 7:30 and Zach is snoring on the couch. He's a poor guy. And I just thought to myself, a roofer in Orlando's like, you guys are wimps, I just roof for 10 hours and 100, but there is something to it. Like, and I've been accused of that by my own family before too. Like, sometimes it looks like you give your best when you're on stage or when you're counseling people, and you come home and you're exhausted. Yeah. And that's tricky.
But I think the only other thing I'd say about the working together is the work and career and vocation are really important, but to try as hard as you can to not get the value of that higher than the value of our relationship and especially our family.
Yeah.
And that's challenging. And part of the piece about it too is like, being in ministry and then even in Red Letter, like there have been incredible people that we've been around. Mm-hmm. But the one constant in all of that, both for my work and also obviously family, is she's here. Mm-hmm. And I need to value what she says at least double of what anyone else says. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, she's the most loyal. She's the most committed. And especially if it comes to work, like I remember a really hard conversation we had was when we both got really busy in life in 2017. And we went to see a counselor, and we knew what the counselor was going to say, that we need to stop doing as much as we are, and we need to say no to some things. And one of the things was going to say no to the kids director role at the Cross, which needed to move from part-time to full-time. And we didn't want that for our family. And so it was like
we didn't want me to work full-time. Yeah.
While our kids were young. And so for me, it was like the family's first. And so that's a good decision for our family. And I believe in it. I value it. Yes. But the pastor work side, I was like, oh, I'm losing a really great employee.
You're like,
and I have nobody to back it up with, but we need to figure that out. And that would be best for our family and our marriage, and we did.
Yeah.
And so it's hard, like it's challenging, and there's some, even now with Red Letter stuff, like we there's a little more flexibility maybe in how we do it, but we got to keep moving on things. At the same time, we can't put that ahead of kids and relationships. So
well, and the other thing too is that you guys, you don't have a fancy corporate office. Like, you're working from home a lot of times, or you're going to a coffee shop or doing something like that. Do you find is that difficult for you to like get in the zone and just start writing, or?
Oh, there's positives and negatives. Mm-hmm. The positive is you don't have the commute. You can you save money on eating out or your meals because you can just run to the kitchen.
Right.
The negative is, you really have to train your brain to shut out everything. I
can't do it. I cannot do it. Like if I'm at home trying to write a sermon, it does not work. I distracted squirrel, so I'll have to go somewhere to where I think that's just discipline.
And I think that's just it's just the reality for parents with kids in the home. And ours are older now, 13 and 16, where it's not as maybe time constrictive or, every minute focused as it used to be, but it's just different. This summer, the past summer, it's like, our youngest son is 13 and he's playing golf nearly every day in a league or a tournament. And like someone's got to drive him there, and golf's not a quick sport. And so sometimes it's an hour away and there's a 4-hour, 18 holes you got to play for a tournament. And so it's a little rearranging. It's difficult. It's not easy, but I also just think that's the reality. And from the 41-year-old dad side of me, it's like we only have 5 or 6 more years left before they're both college age or higher. So work stuff is important as it is. If we need to step off the gas a little bit more to just be a more present dad, mom for these years.
But that's got to be hard for both of you because you're both so.
I would say one important thing if you're working together as a spouse too is to be okay with reinventing. So I've been a writer who wakes up at 5 and writes from 5:30 to 7:30. I've also been a writer who sleeps until 9 and then works in the evening when it's quiet. I've been a writer who is a morning person and then walks my dog in the afternoon. I've been a writer who you have to try different things in different seasons. And just because so-and-so says, do it this way doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And don't be afraid to try something else. I think that really helps.
So speaking of writing, you guys both have a new book coming out, which is really exciting because
we do.
It's Red Letter Advent.
Yeah.
And in a moment, we're going to talk about the project. But first, what's it like? I've always wanted to ask you guys this. What's it like to create something like a book from scratch? Like, to walk us through that process. And how did we get to, Advent? You guys are known for your disciple-making books, right? But how did this come about? Because it seems like a different project than you've previously done.
I would say first, you never make something from scratch.
Okay.
You always write from either your own experience, and the School of Hard Knocks is well earned.
Yeah.
That is not easy. Or you write from research, which is also just as hard. So for every book that we write, I would say, and anyone, I really say, you should read at least 30 to 35 books.
Oh, wow.
To write one book.
Okay.
You're kind of gleaning all this information, taking the best of what fits into your story, and then going from there.
That's a lot of books.
From scratch.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're never going to write if you don't read.
Well, and honestly, I don't know. There's a lot of pastors listening to this. I mean, I would say most of my sermons are not my original ideas.
No.
They're things that I've heard, and then combining scripture with it. What do you think about that comment, Zach?
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think sometimes whether it's books or audiobooks or podcasts or sermons or I think that obviously can cater.
That can all count.
Yeah, that can cater to a certain individual. I'll read maybe not 30, 35 books, but maybe 10 books or so. But then I listen to just hours and hours and hours of podcasts every week. And so the point is that there's nothing from scratch. And I always think as pastors, we have a little bit of an advantage in that we're already creating content weekly, many of us, for sermons that we'll preach. And so for us, it was this Red Letter Advent one specifically, I had already come out with Red Letter Challenge in like January of 18. And she had written the Red Letter Kids book in fall of 19. And I don't know what it was, but we came up with this really cool sermon series for Advent at the Cross when I was there in 2019. And it was called Unboxed. And we were going to look at these 4 words, hope, peace, joy, and love, which are the 4 traditional, if someone's doing a wreath, the 4 candles, and also that churches preach on those topics, hope, peace, joy, and love. And we just created a really cool like graphic elements around it, and like you would buy an item online, there's different steps, and there was like these really cool icons of like adding to cart and check out and out for delivery and in transit and delivered and returns. And I was like, man, this someday would make a really great idea. I should do something with this. And so that was all the way back in 2019. And we did something with it for the Cross. But like there's something more. With Red Letter Challenge, I was like, there's some ideas that you have every now and then. Not every idea is a good one. Invention, like you need that discerner. But there's some idea, I feel like every 2 years or every 18 months, especially if you're a pastor that's doing it every week and just pounding out all that material, I bet 1 or 2 of those things every 2 years would pop into something bigger and greater. And so we get that advantage that we're not starting from scratch a lot of times. And so that's where the genesis of the Advent unboxing idea came from. It's like, let's take what we started there and obviously use our Red Letter branding and kind of style and that sort of look to Jesus mentality and go forward with this in a way that we haven't quite fully explored yet.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So today, and we were sitting around having a cup of coffee before we got here, and I asked.
And by we, that's you. I don't drink coffee.
Right,
Go ahead.
Allison and I.
Oh, Allison and you. Oh, okay.
Remember, she's here.
That's right.
So I said to Allison, I said, do you like writing books, and can you explain the process? And one of the funny comments that she said to me was, it's almost like, carrying a baby, like delivering a baby.
Oh, yeah.
So
I've had experience with that.
I know. Zach, you have not. So talk a little bit about that. Do you enjoy the writing process? And talk about that analogy you made this morning.
So we all know what it feels like to have a crush in like elementary school, and you kind of think about that person all the time, or in high school, whenever.
Yeah.
That is my relationship with writing.
Interesting.
And that sounds kind of silly, but when I am not doing it, I am thinking about doing it.
Wow.
And when I am doing it, I am very happy, and time goes by like that.
Huh.
Most of the time. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that, but most of the time, yeah. So that is my relationship with writing. I don't know about
What do you
everyone
think,
else.
Zach? Is that yours?
That is not my relationship at all with writing. And that's why we work well together, I think, because I really love to write because I know that after I get done
You
writing,
like having written.
and especially after we've done our work with it,
Yeah.
I love having written and having something tangible to say we did this.
I actually feel better. I enjoy more during.
Yeah,
than
she likes
after.
the process.
I'm sad.
Yeah.
I'm
You're
actually
sad that it's
after.
over.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thank God this is over. I can move on to the next idea.
Yeah.
Well,
Here's what I love about the writing process. There's a backspace. And that is why I have a hard time with things like this, because how many times in life have you wanted to take something back that you've said? When you talk in real life, you cannot, there's no backspace.
Right.
It's wonderful in writing. Anytime I want, I can take any sentence, any word, any paragraph, any chapter, and it's gone.
Cam, my producer, is my backspace.
My producer. It's our producer. This is
It's
still
my- it's my producer.
I'm still a part of this podcast,
well, I mean,
I think.
I don't know. So
my producer.
Yeah.
My producer.
Man.
And
right
I
here.
guess Jesus is our great backspace.
Oh, come on, baby. That'll
wow.
preach.
That's going in the show notes, isn't it?
Write that down.
Yeah. Allison also does all the show notes for this tomfoolery that we call the Red Letter Disciple.
She does. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Allison, we've had Zach on here before. We've talked about how he maps everything out, and he's got this football field, and he's trying to move the ball forward. And
In order to get a book written,
Correct,
that
correct,
visual
yeah.
helps me. Yeah.
Thank you. And details what needs to happen to get from one end zone to the other. That's how he writes a book. And so he's got it all mapped out, 10 yards, and it's very Zach-like. How do you consistently pump out so much content? And talk a little bit about your process as opposed to what your husband does.
I think I've alluded a little bit about it. You've got to read a lot of content. So it's a little like think about having like a big sieve, and you put gravel and big rocks and sand, and you just keep sieving.
Okay.
And every once in a while, certain things
Nuggets
will stay.
pop. Yeah.
And if it doesn't fall through after,
Interesting.
time is really important because it just gives you some wisdom on, gosh, this, like what Zach was saying with the Advent idea, it is not going away. It's not going away. Or something you've heard that week if you're writing a sermon. Geez, that is really knocking
good.
around in my brain a lot. And I'm really seeing things differently through that. So I would say time, reading content or listening or however you
Consuming
watching
content, yeah.
consuming content, time, and then you got to write every day. Absolutely every day.
That's what I want to drill down on. Like, what does it look like for you? Because I would imagine because you enjoy it so much, like you still could get burnt out if you said, I'm going to write for 6 hours today, maybe. Do you have like a certain time frame or a certain goal? Like when it comes to writing, do you do it Monday through Friday? Are you doing it 7 days a week? Like, what does it look like for you?
So writing is tons and tons. It's a muscle. It's a lot like running or walking.
Okay.
So if you're a runner or walker, you could understand how if I take 2 weeks off, I can probably go and run pretty far. Like I could run for 6 hours. If you're a marathon, I
Sure.
could write for 6 hours. I cannot write for 6 hours every day.
Right.
So that is part of my process is I know I have a capacity, and you can kind of feel after you've done it a while, I can kind of feel when like that muscle's getting tired, kind of like a runner. Some days, it's more, I don't have a whole lot of creativity. It's 1 PM before I can sit down at my desk. So today I'm just going back and reading old content and like doing some editing, getting my mind around what I've written already. Other times it's like, ooh, that creativity is firing and it's all coming out. So time, rewriting, and then putting the reps in are I think crucial for writing.
Okay.
If you don't read, if you do not write every day, you probably will not be successful as a writer. I have a hard time seeing anyone who, in walking, actually, this is kind of interesting. Most famous writers walk or run. Like Tim Mackey, who runs Bible Project, he's a jogger almost daily. I know that Stephen King walks for 4 miles every day.
Wow.
Now, I don't endorse his work, but
Sure.
Famous writer.
Yeah.
I know, and then Charles Dickens walked every single day. Henry David Thoreau was in nature every day. Walking is very, very crucial. I think because it's such an opposite activity to writing, you're just kind of receiving, and then it's good for your brain. So I do walk every day too. I actually think that's a fourth thing that's really important if you want to be a writer, is you almost have to be a walker or jogger.
So then let's say if you're in the midst of a writing project, 7 days a week, you're at least committing some kind of time to the project.
Maybe 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Taking the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yeah, taking the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm curious about this. You've both written plenty of books. There had to be a time where you just had, and I've had this in sermon writing, and I've had this with a lot of creative projects, where you just come up against a friggin' brick wall. You have just, it's not flowing. What would you suggest to maybe that person who's trying to write their first book, or, because a lot of people have ideas for books, but they can't push it to the goal line. What would you say to someone who's in the midst of writing, who's just in just a creative funk?
Yeah.
Write every day. So write something different.
Okay.
Write a short story.
Okay.
Write a poem. Read poetry. Mary Oliver's, fabulous. She's always so happy, and her poems are really helpful with creative block. Listen to interviews of writers on YouTube. So listen to them talk about their art. Amy Tan is a big one. When I listen to her talk about writing, it's like listening to it. It's like listening to someone else talk about falling in love, and it kind of inspires you again to fall in love with your spouse.
Interesting.
You go, oh yeah, that's why I love writing. And then it just comes. You got to be patient.
Yeah.
But don't force it. If you're feeling like you're hitting a brick wall, don't keep bashing your head against it. Go do something else. Don't sit there. Well, if you are sitting there longer than an hour and you haven't written anything, some people just sit there. Don't sit there. Just go do something else.
But also it happens, and I think
it does happen.
The word count goal that I have is not an impressive goal every day, and so I would say set a smaller goal. But also, like Seinfeld, he's like, don't break the chain is his goal, is that every day he just wants to write a joke. Now, typically when he writes a joke, he'll get into that mindset and it'll just flow, right? And so if you set a small goal, you'll still feel accomplished, even if it wasn't like a great day, but you still did something.
Yeah,
but it does happen.
Word count goals are huge.
I think for me, what was frustrating, the writing process, obviously we have different ideas and what we feel about that. I think the one outlier for me of when I really, really enjoyed writing was Forgiving Challenge.
Okay.
I had a blast writing that. I felt like I was in a rhythm. It was coming easy. I feel like the vision God gave me in my head was actually getting shown on the pages. That was my favorite book to write so far. And I was thinking, maybe this is just how it is, because it's my third, full book at that time. And then we wrote Serving Challenge. And I felt like I hit the wall so many times in that project. And it was a grind. And I think it turned out good, but it didn't flow easy.
Yeah.
And so I would just say it's natural, it's going to happen, but keep going and distract yourself. And
a good book isn't easy to write, and a hard book isn't hard. You know what I mean? It doesn't correlate. It can be totally hard by the end of it. It's like raising two different kids. One's super easy, one's challenging.
Not in our case, of course, Brady and Nathan, but
yeah. But you love them both, but one can be harder.
Yeah, sure. No, I get it.
It's like you have two hosts, and one is super kind and helpful and generous, and the other is constantly seeking.
You know what? Let's move on, Zach. How is being a writer, Allison? How is being a writer helping you to fulfill your God-given abilities and skills and really live up to the disciple that Jesus has called you to be?
It's funny looking back. I was going to be an English teacher. I wanted to write. I loved writing and reading, but I changed my major halfway through because I taught English in China and thought it was horrible and it was hard. And I thought, well, I can't do this, so I've got to just change to theology. So theology was sort of a Hail Mary.
Literally. Yeah.
It really was. I was like, I've got to graduate, whatever. And I had met Zach at that point. And so I was like, I'm not going to do teaching. And so I kind of thought I was giving up on a dream. But it was so funny that God was using, I I had to have that theological and doctrine foundation in order to write what we write. If I didn't understand that, I could write really nice books, but they wouldn't be really true.
They would have been more like a TED Talk than a inspiration.
Maybe, yeah. So that really helped me having that theology degree and understanding our Lutheran background and why we believe what we believe, being able to defend that, and also interpreting that for kids. I taught confirmation quite a bit, and then with my experience, really my whole life, God has been using these different pieces, and it all kind of came together. But I could have never predicted that. In fact, I always said, I don't know what I want to be. I have really no idea. I just want to be a mom. I'm so glad I didn't know I loved writing so much back then. I would have been a horrible mother and a horrible wife back then, because I would have just wanted to do, it would have been so sad to just give up what I wanted to do to support. But at the time I didn't know it. And so I was super happy. And
so how did you discover it?
Zach said, can you write this kid's book? And I said, no.
You were the one that I had the idea of the kids' book.
I said,
like,
we
hey,
should really have a kid's book. And Zach said, yeah, you do it. And I said, no, I don't want to. And then I did it. So
see, I was an
this
idea
is our process.
I had that she discerned initially said no to, but
it is our process.
It became the thing that she's fallen
I do
in
say
love
no,
with.
and then I always come around.
Well, and also too, like we've worked together in different ways as we talked about earlier, but I think part of the really difficult discussion for us at the end of 2019 when we're leading this awesome church in Florida, but also God is clearly doing something with Red Letter. It's like, what do we do from here?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be hard to do both.
We can't. I can't. Yeah. We can't do both. And we were right back to that place where the counselor was like, yeah, you're doing too much. We were right there again. And what's been neat, I think she really, not really, I know she really like sacrificed and leaned in on my dream to
I don't know.
To plant a church and to be in ministry.
Yes and no. I had nothing. That is what I wanted to do, was support you. So I was really very happy. It wasn't a miserable sacrifice.
But part of what made this like Red Letter really appealing to us, as stepping more for me, made this really appealing is like, this is going to be something that I know she's gifted in. I know she feels fulfillment and joy.
I do feel like you saw my writing ability before I even did.
Yeah. How did you know that she would actually enjoy it?
Because I think she's amazing at a lot of things that she's kind of
He got lucky. He guessed right.
No, like she
said.
I don't know.
But
like,
had you seen her write?
I hadn't written
but seriously,
anything.
even this, like, she hates being in front of camera. She hates leading class like Bible study. Every time she does it, everybody loves her and she does a great job.
Brownie points.
So it's not like she just has this sort of negative self talk that I think is not completely true.
But I think don't a lot of us have that, you know? Like I mean,
for sure.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I mean, it's such a cop-out answer for churchy people, but like I think God was directing both of us into the roles we were supposed to be, and you don't always know, you know, at the time.
So let's move on to let's talk about this brand new book.
Let's go.
Let's go. This is a brand new book from the Zenders. Let's talk Red Letter Advent right now. What is this book all about, and where on earth did this idea come from? Because there's already a lot of Advent opportunities.
So I think a couple pieces would be, number one, I talked about the sermon series from the cross already. So that's kind of the unboxing idea that I think is really cool that we really trace throughout the book. So I would say
explain what Advent is?
Yeah, halfway that. But then the other half would be Allison. I did as well, but I think it was Advent stuff in Allison's life has always been a really important thing.
Oh, yeah. Speak on that.
And so I think, like, when I had the idea and she heard it's Advent, we're like, let's really team up here because we're both passionate about this and can kind of I can bring a little bit of the first creativity to it with the big vision, but she can bring the passion of, like, the whole idea of Advent. And so, yeah, talk about what Advent is for those that don't know.
So Advent is the 25 days leading up to Christmas. It's not in the Bible. It's a man-made invention. It was first mentioned in like the 13th century and then has developed from there. Everyone's heard about the Advent calendar, the countdown.
Yeah, my kids love those.
It's so fun. We did the Lego ones.
Oh, yeah.
Super great. But for me personally, Advent was in the rainy season in Africa where I grew up. And so we had to turn all the lights off because there was a river behind our house. And in the rainy season, all the bugs would swarm to we had solar panels and overhead lights, and they would just, from miles around, it was like the plague. So we had to turn all the lights off. And so one of the things I remember was it was so dark, but then we'd light the Advent calendar or Advent wreath.
Yeah.
And that little light shining means you can't play with your toys, you can't read books, you just have to listen to the devotion, sing the Advent hymns, and like that just made such an impression on me during Christmas growing up because there was nothing else to do. It was so boring and dark. And ever since then, I was like, this was so important to my faith growing up, and I really want my kids to do it. So we did Advent devotions in the morning, but we had the wreath, we lit the candles, and fire. I mean, think about birthday. We always light a candle at birthday, and the kids' eyes like just get so big because it's sort of dangerous. You smell like the smoke afterwards. Like it's such core memories. And so lighting those candles, I think, is really a great way to teach kids about Jesus and have it sink in.
And the flip side of it now then is Advent can be and is such a powerful season. But in our culture, in our context today, people are losing sight of the month of December. It feels like a slog. It feels busier than any other time of the year.
Very commercial.
It's very commercial. Like Advent calendars with Legos and chocolates and beer and candles. Like people... Again, those things are great, but
they don't even realize Advent has anything to do with the church.
A lot of people that are buying it don't understand, and that's part of this is like we're not wanting necessarily to give you one more thing that you got to do. We're trying to actually show you that a lot of things you're already doing, they may be fine, but there's a deeper meaning to all of them. And if you can catch Christ in the middle, in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of December, and especially for his birthday, like that's the best Advent season you're ever going to have, is when you really understand, like let's unbox these gifts, hope, peace, joy, and love. These are real gifts that Jesus not only wants you to have, but in red letter style, he wants you to give those away too. And that's, if you do these things, and again, I know it's going to sound like one more thing to do, but if you do these things and really experience it, a lot of us already are doing parts of this, like they're going to have a really great Advent season. And so that's a piece of like, it's also a part of our Lutheran heritage. It's like, let's lean into that. We are mainline denominational. There are a lot of churches talking hope, peace, joy, and love. And so let's try to give a real Jesus-centered modern approach to Advent to really help people understand the season, because it's powerful when you get it.
The lady that works for us, Brenda, she did not know Advent. She went to a non-denominational church, and she said the first time I heard about Advent was through you guys.
Wow.
Yeah.
So as maybe some people are in the camp of we know what Advent is, but we don't really practice it at home. I think other people we have no idea what Advent is. We don't practice it. Just like Lent. So I think it's something really beautiful.
And I'll tell you, the non-denominational world, they're leaning, maybe without the words, they're leaning more into practices like Lent and Advent. They're realizing that if you prepare for these things like Easter and Christmas, they can actually be even greater when you get to them.
100%.
And so it's a move to hopefully introduce not just Lutherans. Of course, we'd love to work with all the Lutherans out, but non-denominational and other into this practice of really preparing and waiting for Jesus and his birth, and now, of course, for his second coming, because we're still in a season of Advent. He came once. He's going to come again. So we're in that waiting preparation
which
stage.
is what Advent means, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Waiting. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, I'm a pastor. Okay?
Yeah.
You have a lot of pastors that listen to this podcast. I'm a pastor. How do I implement this book like during the Advent season?
Yeah, so it's going to match a lot of what our 40-day challenges do, in the sense that we want, if a church locks in with Red Letter Advent for that season, we want to provide what we hope would be everything a pastor would need creatively, at least the start of it for the month of December. So the books are obviously meant for individuals to read, and they'll have hopefully great daily devotions and even some experiences will go along with that. But we also have created videos in partnership with Right Now Media that a church could use for small groups. But let's be honest, a lot of churches don't do small groups in December. But what do a lot of the mainline denominations, including Lutherans, do? They have a midweek service. And so the videos can either work for small group purposes, or they can be your midweek content
message
that we'll have questions to go with, and we'll have a nice 10 to 15 minute message on video. And it's got kids curriculum that Allison's written for the Sunday morning experience.
Yeah, we don't have a kids book, so it is different.
Yeah.
We both wrote the Advent together.
Okay.
But we do have kids curriculum
Awesome.
and a family edition.
Yeah, if they want to go
With
deeper
activities,
with daily
yeah.
devotionals with their kids.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the idea. Is it's one of the busiest seasons of the year for pastors and leaders.
For sure.
In my mind, I was thinking of this as I'm writing it. It can fit any size church. But as I'm writing it, I'm thinking of the sole pastor who's in charge of Sunday messages, doing a midweek, figuring out how to make Christmas Eve the greatest Christmas Eve their church has ever done, and then still do all the other pastoral stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We want to come alongside and say, all that's really important. Here is an assistant and an ally that you can use, and we'd be honored to partner with you. It's Jesus-centered. You're going to be doing sermons anyway on hope, peace, joy, and love. Those are going to be the topics anyway. So let's do it in a fresh new way.
Or if you're a church that hasn't done Advent, this is a great way to introduce Advent.
Well, and you're exactly right. Like, that is by far the busiest time of the year. Being a sole pastor now, that makes it even tougher. You've got Christmas parties, you've got work parties, you've got all that stuff, even more so than Easter, right? You're just slammed. So let's say that, okay, you've piqued my interest. I'm a pastor, I'm a leader or a listener. How can I get my hands on one of these red hot copies?
Come on. They are hot off the press. So they can go to redletteradvent.com. redletteradvent.com, and that's where they can get the material. I will say, because of the seasonality of this product, Chris, we did a majority of our sales this year through pre-sale. That has already happened. It ended on September 17th, and so that's the only way to kind of guarantee that we have enough copies is if a church got into the pre-sale. We have some extra copies, though, but we only have limited supply, so people do want to get in, pastors and leaders especially, if you want to get like bulk quantity. You got to go to redletteradvent.com if you want your church in this year. If you can't get in this year, we'll do a pre-sale again next year. You know the deal. You can get in. Individual copies, I'm sure we'll have for sale as well for folks at redletteradvent.com.
So we're printing based on orders.
Okay. Yeah. So you don't have 1,000 red letter
It's not something you want to keep in inventory all year. It's
right.
not
Because you're going to order it toward the end of the year.
It's a December product.
Right.
It's
You're
a
not going
seasonal
to
product.
So what's next? Red letter lint?
We feel like our 40-day challenges work perfect for
All
that.
All right. Allison, it's been a pleasure. I know that you were a little apprehensive, but as Zach said, you knocked it out of the park today. I know you know this because you do all of our show notes. We ask all of our guests to challenge our listeners. Is there one thing they could do practically this week to challenge themselves to be greater disciples? What would you challenge them to do?
I would challenge them to make a plan on how to celebrate Advent this year. I know it sounds really early, but actually, if you make a plan, get a schedule ahead of time, just make a plan somehow to celebrate Advent this year.
Yeah, our friend Clayton Green, who invented the Advent blocks, he's a big proponent of that too. Of like,
he was a guest.
I know, he would say, I know it's July or I know it's August when he was with us, but the best thing you can do to celebrate Christmas or Advent well is to pre-plan and get it in the calendar now.
And people buy Christmas gifts all year long. Some people are shopping Amazon deals and buying their Christmas.
My wife does.
And then it's not such a big, heavy budget, you know.
Yeah.
You don't have a huge credit card bill. So anyways, make a plan.
But this is also not just for pastors. Like, I could see like...
families can do
this.
that.
I could see like a grandparent like buying
100%.
it for, you know, like their grandkids or something like that as well. Yeah. All right, Zach, do that thing that you do after everybody says what they should do.
If you take that challenge on, is that what you're talking about? Hashtag Red Letter Disciple, let us know. We'd love to cheer you on, encourage you. And if, one of your things to plan Advent well is to get a Red Letter Advent book, then awesome. We'd be honored for that. So we appreciate that. Chris,
well,
you just slipped off for a second. Are you doing something funny here,
nothing at all. I'm going to hand it back. I'm going to hand it back to myself for a game. And I think I've created maybe the greatest game ever in the history of games.
Okay.
85 episodes in, something like that. 87 episodes in. I thought it would be really fun if we played the Newlywed Game.
Oh.
And Zach, I have asked Zach 5 questions before you got here. And we're going to see, because you guys just celebrated your 20th anniversary.
We did.
Going
20, baby.
They went to Hawaii. They had a blast. Allison,
You know who we stayed with? Our friend Jeff Mueller from Child Beyond International. He's awesome.
Also, I don't know if you know this or not, but we do. If you go 5 for 5, you're going to win the $1,800 Sword of the Spirit that we have, brought to you by Child Beyond International. So this is
great.
really great prize. So I
know just where to put it.
I think it's, Cam, what is that, about $3,200? Did we decide? Yeah, that's our producer, Cam. So you're playing for $3,200 worth of sword here.
You said it was $1,800.
I know, but Cam said go up. It's up.
Okay.
He said up. He's just eBayed us.
Your producer, yeah.
My producer. All right, let's start off with something easy, Allison.
Okay.
Question number 1. Where did Zachary Zehnder propose to you?
Is this multiple choice or do I have to
Nope.
just know? Oh, wow. Fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
He proposed to me in Kansas City, Kansas on July 4th, 2003.
While
Watching fireworks.
That's right. For extra bonus points, do you know the name of the park?
Shawnee Mission?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. All right,
I
one
thought
for
it had
one.
the word Indian in it, but I think that makes sense, Shawnee. I was a little nervous when you said, do I get fill in the blank? Like you didn't even know where I proposed to.
All right, you did
it, though. You pulled it
are
out.
1 for 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
You are 4 questions away from winning the $3,200 Sword of the Spirit. Where was
Our sword, anyway.
That's Child Beyond International gave it to us. Where was your first date, Allison?
Our first date was the revolving restaurant on top. Oh, I don't remember the name of it.
That's
in
all right.
Milwaukee.
He didn't either. He didn't remember the name. I Googled it. It was, do you remember when it was?
February 14th?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that's good. Valentine's Day 2002 was your first date. You went to the Polaris restaurant
Polaris.
at the top of Hyatt Hotel that rotated. Interestingly enough, that restaurant closed in 2009.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
We can't go back.
Well, they have it available for meetings. All right. Let's see. You are 2 for 2, 3 away from the big prize that many people have won this year. What was Zach's favorite vacation that only you and him went on?
So,
Yeah.
no kids, no extended family.
No kids.
Okay.
No kids. No extended family.
Was it our honeymoon? To Cayman Island? Or, I mean, where did we go to?
We went to Cancun, by the way. Did we go to Cayman? Did you
Hold
go
on.
to Cayman with
No.
someone else? Wow, he's going to get something else. No, that's not what I chose.
Hannibal, Missouri?
No.
Okay. The correct answer was the 15th anniversary, the in-based hiking trip.
That wasn't alone. That was
I
with
know, that's why I said,
Kaufman's.
he said alone, but that's why I said, well,
Wait.
without kids or
Kaufman,
extended
Mark and
family.
Lisa
We had friends
Kaufman
that
went with
joined
us.
Cam, can you believe this? How many games are we going to screw up this season? You know what? You're still playing for the sword. That's on
yay.
Zach. That's on Zach.
I was thinking that, and then I thought, oh no.
Well, he
'cause
said alone,
Kaufman's
but
were
he
along.
meant, yeah.
Well, that's why we don't actually take any.
This game segment
We
is
hardly
really
ever
going south.
travel alone.
I know. This whole game segment, we're going to have to change this.
And
All right.
hopefully, by the time this airs, it would have been Hawaii for our 20th.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But
Let's
we
get
haven't-
back to
that's
it.
tomorrow.
You're 3 for 3 because Zach botched it. What is Zach's favorite restaurant in the entire world?
I don't know. Taco Bell.
Oh, that would be favorite fast food. Does that count?
Favorite
No,
restaurant.
I can tell you it's not Taco Bell.
I don't know what you like. Seafood, something.
It is not seafood. It's Mahogany Steakhouse.
Oh.
But don't worry about this. If you get the next question correct, you will play for the smaller sword.
Both of those are ours.
Retail value $75.
How about my price can be? I don't have to bring those back to the house.
I'm taking it on the plane when I leave after
Yeah,
this.
good luck.
Omaha will let me. Orlando, they wouldn't. But
honestly.
okay, Allison, this is the toughest question.
Okay.
This is really tough. Your husband told me you are an amazing cook. He said that before you got here. He said the variety that you come up with, he can't even understand just the versatility and the quality of your food. But there is one of your meals that you make, and you haven't made it for a while, that is by far his favorite.
I don't know if by far.
He said it's not even close.
It was the one I thought of. I didn't say not even close.
You're playing for the mini sword of the Spirit?
What do you love that I make?
Yeah.
I make so many good things.
I know.
Let's
That's what I
see.
So
said.
humble,
It's
so
hard,
humble.
But she. There's a big variety.
Chicken cordon bleu.
Wow, that is correct.
Nice.
It is actually chicken cordon bleu.
We did it.
That is
See?
100% right.
Boom.
Welcome.
I should make that more
Congratulations.
often.
You get the little sword of the
Aw.
Spirit. You can sell that on eBay.
And a no expenses paid trip to Hawaii.
Hawaii, yeah.
Yay!
All right, guys, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Allison, for overcoming your fears and just delivering an amazing podcast. Thank you for putting up with the tomfooleriness of myself and Zach. And wow, I think that's going to
did it.
do it for today. Huh?
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks,
Love it.
guys.
Good job, babe.
Well, it's a joy for you to meet Allison, and I love my life. And we're super grateful to continue to do Red Letter Living. And thank you so much, true, from the bottom of both of our hearts, for all the churches and pastors and leaders and individuals that have leaned in and helped Red Letter Living even become a thing. For years now, you've bought our books, you've used our resources, and this podcast is, I'll be real with you, we don't make any money off this podcast. We spend money to do it. We produce it, and it's our gift to you. We want to bless you, and you're able, through all of your support and generosity in the past, we want to do something for you, and that's what this podcast is. So thanks so much. It's cool that you got to meet Allison today. I'd love for you to check out redletteradvent.com and buy those books and use them for Advent this season. If you're an individual, you can probably find a few for your family. If you're a church, there may be a limited supply, but hey, if they're there and it says in stock, grab it. Otherwise, you got to wait till next year, Advent 2025, to use something like this. We had an amazing season. I'm talking world-class guests, so many powerful stories, including Brenna Blaine, David Ashcraft, giving some incredible global leadership advice, I should say, from the Global Leadership Director of the Global Leadership Network. Man, we're so grateful. We had 6 partners this season, and we're really grateful to come back, hopefully, for season 8, Lord willing, in 2025. And so 2 things on the way out. First off, we're going to break for the year. So have a great holiday season. Enjoy Thanksgiving. Celebrate the birth of Jesus like crazy. We'll see you back in 2025. But 3 things. Number 1, if you haven't individually rated or reviewed or subscribed or followed, make sure you do that so you know when season 8's coming on. That would be really cool. Number 2, what guest do you want us to reach out to have on the Red Letter Disciple? I'd love to reach out to the people you want to hear from. So let us know, hello at redletterchallenge.com. And then finally, do you know another partner? Do you know another sponsor? Are you one of those that's leading a really powerful ministry or organization specifically that highlights pastors and church leaders? That's our audience. And so if so, we'd love to partner with you on our podcast and many other things in 2025. And so reach out again to hello@redletterchallenge.com. Say, hey, I'm interested in being a partner or sponsor, or I know someone who may be interested. We'd love to know that. And that would be really a great help so we can keep doing podcast episodes like this. Thank you so much, listeners, and we'll see you back for season 8. I'm hoping sometime in early 2025. God bless you all. Let's go be the great disciples Jesus has made us to be. God bless you.